evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Charles Anthony Home, where Washington's ghosts speak. Originally, normally this home is better known as the George Stimson Home, or the Stimson Home, where he and Mary Danforth Stimson lived, and their daughter Susan lived almost a century, from 1898 until 1984 at Susan's death. Now it is the home of my husband Tom and I, and we welcome you tonight to hear an evening of real people who lived in the home, and one person who proclaims to have seen a ghost, not necessarily in this home. The first scenario we've set up to help you learn a little about Victorian wake customs, as would have happened to the Anthonys when their son Clyde died in 1879. Their son was not necessarily had a wake. They didn't necessarily have a wake here, but we've set it up so you could see what might have happened for a normal Victorian family. By the way, did you get your invitation? You would normally have received one to come to a Victorian wake, and out there I have the invitation I would have shown you. Also, did you notice how the doorways were draped in black and there was a black wreath hung at the door? That would also be an indication that someone in the home had died. Now, if you would, we have invited you into this room to express your sympathies to Mr. and Mrs. Anthony and hear about their story. Mr. Anthony.
I'm Charles Anthony. My wife, Elizabeth, and I are here on this sad occasion, and we welcome you to help us grieve our young son, Clyde. Clyde was of singular personal beauty. He was the apple of his mother's and my eye. It's tragic that the ruthless hand of death took him so early. It was a crushing blow not only to our family, but to the entire community who knew him well. Little Clyde died in Jacksonville, Florida. We had taken Elizabeth there in January because of ill health. We were hoping the hot Florida sun would help her with some of her rheumatism. Alas, little Clyde fell ill about 2 weeks ago. He first took a fever, and it turned into chills. Before we knew it had spread to his lungs, and little Clyde just couldn't make it. I know many of you have had the same thing happen with your little ones. That fever, once it sets in the lungs, the little ones just can't fight it off. We had the best doctors in Florida, and we put Clyde out in the hot Florida sun, hoping to burn some of the poison out of his system. But it was to no avail. Just before he died, Clyde called for his Unca doctor. Many of you know Dr. R.B.M. Wilson, my sister's husband. Dr. Wilson is well known in Washington for many things as a banker, a politician, but best known as the best doctor in these parts. He had cured Clyde before, but not this time. Little Clyde, calling for his uncle, forgot that his uncle had passed just 3 weeks ago. When Clyde remembered that, he said he would see his Unca doctor up there. We rushed Clyde's body back by speeding locomotive. We got back in 2 days after his death because we needed to be with you, our family and our friends, in trying to accept this grief. You know, our family is wealthy. My partner, Henry Denhart, who lives right across the street, and I expect he will be here later, and I started the Denhart Bank up on the square, the Anthony and Denhart Bank. Our reputation grew all over the United States. Before long, we had investments from the East Coast in Philadelphia out to the Western Territory in a little town called Denver, where we kept our cattle business. But you know, none of that helped. Money didn't help when little Clyde passed. We had to use our faith in the Lord, and we hope that our friends can help us do that. In closing, I would just like to say that we ask you to be with us tonight as we shepherd our little lamb up to his maker in heaven. Thank you, folks.
I brought you into the middle parlor of the Anthony's home to tell you a little bit about Victorian mourning customs. They're quite different from our customs today, but they were first begun by Queen Victoria herself, who after 21 years lost her beloved husband Albert in 1861. She mourned 40 years until the time of her own death, but most wives of Victorian times mourn a period of 2 years after their spouse has died. It would be a little bit less for a child or another close relative. But at this time of 2 years, they have to wear completely, they have to be dressed completely in black, as you saw Mrs. Anthony today, wearing a veil over her face and a widow's cap with the veil. They would not wear any jewelry, and they would even have a black petticoat, or at least the tip of the petticoat would be black. So if you were going upstairs, you would see the black and not white. They didn't want to, the veil was because they didn't want others to see that they had been crying. And also they were very superstitious because they felt that the deceased spirit kind of hovered around them. And if somebody would look on their face, that spirit might possibly attach themselves to the other person. So it would kind of be a protection for the other person as well as themselves. They were not supposed to go anywhere in public except to church services, so they were kind of in their home most of that time. Even hankies would be white, trimmed in black, so black was the norm. Second year, they would not have to wear the veil, and they could wear gray, mauve, or white with the black. They were also allowed to wear jewelry. And a lot of jewelry then was made from hair of the deceased. And I have a couple of examples. These are bracelets made with hair of a deceased loved one. There's a couple of them here. And a necklace. And you can see it, if you can see it, it's all twisted like a braid. And then I even have a ring on that's got some hair from a loved one. Also, if you had to have mourning clothing in very quickly, which normally you would because you wouldn't expect someone to die, that was often the first clothing that was purchased because you did need it in a hurry. If you were not wealthy enough to purchase it, you could dye some of your clothing black or have somebody else dye it. And then sometimes they'd bleach it back again so they could wear it later. I'm not sure how they did that, but anyhow, they believed black represented the absence of life and light. And the Romans believed that wearing it would prevent them from being haunted by the dead. Other superstitions included, you might have noticed in the front parlor, that the mirrors were draped with black. If you were to look in a mirror and see yourself in the home of somebody that has died, you might be the next one to die. So they cover the mirrors, so that won't happen. The clocks, if somebody dies in the home, they stop the clock on the hour of death. And anyway, we hope you've learned something about these customs of Victorian times. And if you are more interested in learning even more about how the customs changed throughout the years, you might want to come to our next Washington Historical Society meeting on November 22nd. It's held every month at the Presbyterian Church at 7 o'clock. And our next program will be about these things. Stephanie Deiters and Tim Kraus will be there to present them, and he's the one I got a lot of the information from about this tour. So if you'll follow me, please, we have a couple of other surprises in store. Jake, what are you doing up so late at night?
Well, Mom, you didn't come and get me a drink when I asked you to, but another nice lady did. She turned on the lights for me since I couldn't see them, and then she got me a glass of water.
Really?
She's a really nice lady.
Really?
She still might be in there if you want to check.
Oh,
Well, good night.
good night. I think we ought to check. Step right in there and something.
I've been wandering this home for many years trying to help the children that live here. I've been unable to let go of the feeling that my child died prematurely. And so because of that, I try to help Jake when he needs something in the middle of the night. And I will continue to roam the house as long as children live here and try to help them the best I can.
This is actually a true story. It did not happen at this house. It happened at a house on Walnut Street. And we're just grateful that this ghost is a friendly ghost. Actually, most of the ghost stories that we hear about in Washington are spirits that are friendly. I think it's kind of like Washington itself, don't you? It's kind of a friendly city to live in. As we progress to the dining room, there are some kind of scary people in there waiting to serve us some spooky type treats. But don't worry, they're really friendly and they're happy to serve you if you dare. And as you get your treats, you can linger a while in the dining room, or you can tarry on through the kitchen, the old kitchen, and out to the back and watch the Central Illinois Civil War dancers. We thank you for coming to our historical tour tonight and hope that you have enjoyed it. If you have not already done so, please cross the street to the Schnibbens house, and there also you will hear some different stories. Thank you.
Welcome to Washington Historical's first spooky house tour where the Ghost of Washington speak. John, Angie, and Sam Schnibben have opened up their house for this Halloween walk because I love to decorate for Halloween, especially Angie Schnibben here, who has collected Halloween for years. Feel free to browse at the rooms because they're all creatively decorated, and don't be too surprised if you see a few ghosts of your own or hear a few ghosts, because the house was actually Washington's first hospital in the 1940s. So many people were born here and many people had probably maybe died here. I don't want to tell you everything, but follow me into the middle parlor where we meet the fortune teller Zora, who knows all. Maybe we can even see some people who have lived here. Madam Zora, looking into your crystal ball, just what do you see? We have some curious folks here tonight.
I see a lot of different people who have lived in this house. There were bankers, doctors, and a baker. There were many, many people who were sick as well. But first, I see a young couple who were very much in love, and the man built this house for his wife. Wait, I think I feel his presence now.
Sorry. I hope I didn't spook you. You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm Frank Hops, and I'm here to tell you my story. It's a sad story. Oh, let me tell you why. Well, to start out with, I was born back in Civil War times. That was one of the worst times of our country. In 1865, I was born in Peoria, Illinois. Well, 10 years later, my family moved us here to Washington. I attended Washington schools. I even graduated from Washington High School in 1882. Well, I was pretty lucky at that time because I got a job right out of high school with Mr. Henry Denhart at the bank. After only working there for 8 years, I saved my money and worked hard. I was able to marry my sweetheart, Carrie Voorhees. Oh, wonderful Carrie. In 1896, we built this beautiful Victorian home, which you find yourself here tonight. Isn't it lovely? Our son Donald was even born here. Oh, those were the good days. Comes the happy time. But like everything in my life, it didn't last. After only 4 years of marriage, my wonderful Carrie died. Oh, I couldn't even stand to go around this house. Every room reminded me of Carrie. I just couldn't stand it, so I sold it. I sold it to Henry Harms. Now Henry worked with us at the bank. He was a nephew, in fact, of Henry Denhart. I would imagine probably he was named after Uncle Henry. Well, after losing Carrie, I just threw myself into my work, and I worked really hard. Oh, 35 years at the bank. In 1917, when Mr. Denhart decided to divide up the business. So he sold me 1/3 of the business. He sold the other third to Frank Kingsbury. Well, the three of us, we were really aggressive bankers. We got out there and we really pushed the business. We were known throughout the Midwest. Well, like the other tragic times in my life, that didn't last. Along came the Great Depression, another terrible time in our country's history. Oh, depositors wanted their money back, but what could we do? We'd already loaned it out. The state regulators came in and locked our doors and we were closed. Oh, it was terrible. Oh, they even sold all my properties and took all my money. I was penniless, without a trial or anything. Well, us three partners were even charged with bank embezzlement and perjury. Oh, it was a terrible time. I alone was charged with 27 different counts. Why, I was so poor I couldn't even make bail. So I had to go to jail. Oh, that was terrible. Here I was, penniless, no job, no home. What was I do? My boy Donald was out in California. I couldn't leave the state. I was under indictment. So I decided I'd go to Saybrook, which is over east of Bloomington, close to here. I went over, my brother was over there, George, my sister Elizabeth. So I kind of alternated staying with them. About the only thing I had that I really loved to do was fish. Oh, I love to go fishing, as you can see. One afternoon about 4 o'clock, I decided I would go out to the gravel pit there in Saybrook. It was one of my favorite spots. I had a little peninsula there I like to fish from. There's a lot of people there when I got there, but by the time I was there a while, they had all gone home to supper. Well, George started worrying about me. It started to get dark, and I didn't show up. So he got together some of his friends, and they came looking for me. Well, lo and behold, there was some of my fishing tackle on the bank. There's another pole over here stuck in the ground. I was nowhere to be found. Looking around, they saw some skid marks. Looked like the bank had caved away down into the gravel pit. Well, I didn't know what to do. One of the friends was going to start diving for me, but he said the water was too cold and he didn't want to go in there. He's afraid to get cramps unless they had a rope tied around him. So off went George and this friend to get a rope. While they were gone, one of the other guys put a hook on a line and started casting it out to the bottom and pulling it back. Casting it out and pulling it back. He hooked something. Pulled it in. That was my body. Coming out of 15 feet of water. Oh. Newspaper said, oh, this is suspicious. Well, maybe it was. I was going to go before the Tazewell County Grand Jury in just a few days for all these things they were accusing me of, taking money from children, you know, in the States. I had a good reputation. Oh, well, I guess that secret died there in that gravel pit with me. And you know, ghosts don't give up their secrets. Dead men never tell. But it's kind of ironic. You can go downtown and there's the Denhart Bank. Mr. Denhart's name on it. Now it's not a bank anymore. They've made a dining place out of it. You can go in there and eat, or you can go downstairs and have some libations. But the name Denhart is there. Oh, you can get in your car and drive over on Kingsbury Street. Ride your bicycle, walk your dog down Kingsbury Street. So Mr. Kingsbury's still remembered here in town fondly. What about Frank Hops? I built this beautiful Victorian home. Is this the Hops home? No, this is the Harms home. I guess there's just no justice in this world. Well, they say over in Saybrook, you don't go around that gravel pit fishing. Especially around 7 o'clock at night, because at 6 minutes till 7, my watch had stopped in my pocket when I went into the water. Now, people say they sometimes see a body floating out there, and then they look again real hard, and there's nothing there. Same with this house. People that have lived in this house will be walking around, they see something out of the corner of their eye, and look, there's nothing there. Or sometimes they hear a real silent voice. Carrie, Carrie. What are we to make of this? Even the bank building downtown, they've got an old teller's cage in there that I used to stand behind when I worked at the bank. They look there and they see something, but they look back. There's nothing there. Personally, I really don't like the bank building anymore after all the suffering I went through with banking. Mainly, I just go down to the basement. So I really love visiting the spirits down there. Thank you for your attention. I do have pictures of my younger, happier days here. I have a picture of the evil gravel pit that took my body. They laid my body to rest here in Washington. And I've got a nice tombstone. I didn't have a service. Not even a service for poor Frank Hops. My wife Carrie is buried there. We're right alongside each other. Also, there's numerous newspaper reports of my passing. None were too complimentary. But I thank you for your time here this evening. Feel free to walk around the building. I intend to myself.
That is so sad about Mr. Hops. I wonder what really happened to him. What else do you see in your crystal ball?
Well, let's see. I see doctor's offices, that of Dr. Burl Whitlock, and Dr. George Cohen, and then Raymond Lazance and his wife Roberta. They lived in this house. And they made it the first hospital around 1943. Dr. Cohen was one of the major physicians here, but the need for more room forced them to buy a bigger place over on Holland in South Main. And then there was a banker named Johnny who had a bakery on the square, and he made the best glazed donuts around. From there, the details are starting to become hazy, but keep your eyes open as you wander around, because maybe you'll meet a couple more of these people. It seems I'm starting to feel their presence now.
Okay, folks, let's make our way through the rest of the house. I think I smell donuts. Johnny Leonard, is that really you?
Sure is.
What I would give for one of your glazed donuts, better than Krispy Kreme. Only 5 cents, right?
Yes, correct.
Thanks, Johnny. Sorry there's not enough donuts for everyone. Okay. Well, we'll be on our way through the kitchen, but not without visiting Dr. Cohen in the hospital lab. Don't get too close. He might want to get some blood. Good evening, Dr. Cohen. Do you have anything interesting that you've discovered in your laboratory?
Indeed. I have just discovered 2 new elements. The first I call vinegar. The second I call baking soda. And when the two emerge, it begins to fizzle. Observe. Behold the power of your truth. Fascinating, isn't it? Now, I'd like to show you the rest of my laboratory. Here I have my different experiments. I have my idols and my frogs. Now we should move on. Here I have my different test tubes. Here I have my idols and my shrunken heads. Now, shall lead you through the haunted graveyard if you dare. Although you could stay and I could dissect your brain. Nah, you probably won't stay and let me dissect your brain. But if you dare, you can leave through the graveyard.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you for everyone coming tonight to support the Washington Historical Society. If you've not already done so, please cross the street and visit the Gross's house. And good night. Thank you.